Can you guys in the back hear me okay? We got a new mic and I've kind of okay. I'm still trying to play with it. It don't pick up as well as the other mic we had, and uh, still kind of trying to tweak it. If I put it down on my tie too far, it don't pick up like the other mic. But as you know, the other mic went pop, and so this one don't do that. So went. It sounded like I don't even know. Okay, let's get in the Word. We're going to get lost this morning if we keep going that way, right? John chapter 21. John chapter 21. We've been here for a couple weeks, and we're going to start at the second verse. The second verse. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Canaan in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon told them, and they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and got in the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you'll find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped in the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they had landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with a fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish you have just caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153, but even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Amen. We have talked for the last, we didn't last week. We kind of ventured a little different, but this week, the weeks prior, we were talking about turning the page, moving ahead, not staying where we're at, not being content where we're at, but moving on. And I've been giving you the tools to do that. Some of the tools are be in the right place at the right time. This was number one, be in the right place and wait for the right time. God's timing is perfect, but there's a place He has for you to be in. You need to be in that place. You need to be ready in that place and ready for when the time comes. And then it is understand that failure brings a reward. Failure brings a reward. How many's failed in here? Every one of us has failed in here, but we can learn something from that. And if we take and realize that we failed and acknowledge our failure, we can see that and we can go and move in a different direction. We can move away. We can use that as a tool to benefit us. And so failure can be a blessing and it can bring a reward. And then we went to sow what you got. Sow what you got. Everybody's got something. I don't care if you think you have nothing. You got something. You got breath right now. Sow it. Sow it. You've got something. Sow it. And sow what you got. You'll never reap if you don't sow. There's no harvest if you don't sow. I saw somebody already started their garden there, cousins of mine, and they're always talking about their garden, and they've already got their tomato plants up, and they love to. They can keep their tomatoes. Send me something else. But they've already got their tomato plants up and growing. They're sowed something because they want something when it comes harvest time. So you got to sow if you want to get. You've got to sow what you've got. And then the last where I left you off, and we didn't get very far, was stay the course. Stay the course. There's a course that God's got you on, a trajectory. He's got you on something. We're not talking, remember I differentiated between the right place and the right time. The place is about your position, but the course is on. You could be going left and He wants you going right. You need to be going down the middle. It's all about where you're going. As we see Peter, he turned back. He's no longer moving ahead. He circled back. He circled back to where God brought him from. There's so many Christians that run this cycle. They circle back and circle back. They only go so far with God and they circle back. You got to stay the course. How many knows that you shouldn't be the same Christian you were 5 years ago? If you were born again 5 years ago, you shouldn't be in the same place. You shouldn't be walking the same way. You shouldn't even be walking the same direction. You should have been veering to a whole nother direction. Because where you were going, the place you were going, is the completely opposite of place where God destined you to go. But we often circle back around. And we circle back around because of what? Of routine and comfort, right? So oftentimes it's routine, it's comfortable, it's something. It's amazing the way I've changed over the years. I remember when I was growing up, and I love baseball. It's my favorite sport. It's still my favorite sport today. And I mean, my dream was to play professional baseball. I wanted to play professional baseball. And I played baseball every chance I got. I went to camps. But I had one cousin, when we'd get together, we developed a way to play baseball one-on-one. You got to be improvised to play baseball one-on-one. You got to have an imagination. We did it. You did it. And we done it. But I had another cousin, he's a little older, and he didn't like to play baseball one-on-one. We had it all set. He didn't like that. He didn't even really like to play. He just wanted to go out and play catch. He just wanted to play catch. And I couldn't stand it. I didn't like playing catch. Because catch was just throw the ball there and throw it back. There was no challenge to it. I can throw the ball. If I couldn't throw the ball, I wouldn't be playing baseball, right? So I didn't like just standing there playing catch. It wasn't a challenge to me. Wasn't a challenge to me. I wanted a challenge. I wanted something to strive after. I wanted something to go after, and a reason that I'm out here. And I'm just that way. I'm a very competitive person. You know, I want to do it to the best. I want to be the best. You know, and so you know, I didn't like play catch. Me and Donovan, we'll go out and we'll even play catch. We'll play catch with a football, and I'll get out there and I'll start have to throw left-handed. Just challenge myself. You know, I got to do something to challenge myself. But in life, it seems like we're just the opposite so oftentimes, is it not? We don't like a challenge. We don't like when the going gets tough. We don't like it when things get out of whack. When all of a sudden there's a 10 inches of snow in the middle of February, and we've had some pretty nice weather up to that point, and then all of a sudden, and then we get record cold temperatures coming in. It kind of upsets the balance of all our plans and everything we have. All of a sudden, everything's out of whack, and we're like, what? We're a little frustrated because we like routine. I've got routines that I do every day. I put on my pants the same way, Terry. I get up and put on my shirt the same way. I get out of bed. I got a time I get out of bed. Unless I have to get up early for some reason, which I don't like. I don't have to, but I get up at 4 o'clock for no reason like the other day. That irritates me. But anyway, we like routine. But what happens? What happens when we get stuck in routine? What happens when we get stuck in routine? We get too comfortable with status quo. We get too comfortable with look, as Christians, I think this is one of the biggest problems we have and we face today. We get comfortable with church. We get comfortable with worship. We get comfortable with the way the things are. We get comfortable with the way the world is. We get comfortable the way our household is. We get comfortable with the way things are around us, and we just walk through it. And oh, Lord help me, because I'm going to preach too early. But listen, I was sitting there on the couch the other day, and I'm sitting there thinking how there's somebody over here and something upsets the way their life was. It wasn't what they had planned. But all of a sudden they get punched in the face, things going on in their life. And here I am, I'm just still going through the same routine. Why? Because nothing is changing in my life. Nothing, because I don't want it to change. I want it to stay the same. And so then what happens? I take it for granted what I have before me. And I never strive for anything better. See, when God is talking and He meets them and He's telling them stay the course, He isn't saying, listen, being a fisherman is great, but when I give you a word that I'm going to take you from fisherman to a fisher of men, He's saying there's nothing wrong with being a fisherman. There's nothing wrong with where you're at. I just want to take you further Don't stay here. Move you ahead. This is why he's so prevalent right now in trying to push the church. We'll move ahead. Don't settle on yesterday's bread, but I want the fresh bread. I poured out manna in the wilderness daily. Don't settle for that. Don't settle for miracles that happened 10 years ago. Go after the fresh bread. I want miracles today. I want signs and wonders today. We study the book of Acts. It's not so we can say, oh, that was awesome. No, it's because we say, greater signs and wonders should we be doing today. This is why we do it. He's saying, look. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being a doctor, but how many wants to be a healer? God says, I'm going to take you from being a doctor. A doctor ain't a healer. Go ask them. They're just practicing. They're just practicing. They can't heal nobody. That's not. And there's a lot of kids saying, "I'd love to be a doctor," but how would you go from being a doctor to a healer? And that's what the power of God does through you. It's a healing power. How would you like to be going from a builder to a builder of men? A house builder, come on, somebody. How would you like to go from being a shepherd pasturing the sheep to a shepherd of men? How would you? This is what God does. He says it's nothing wrong with where you're at. There's nothing wrong with it. But when I have more for you, why would you settle for so much less? This is why when he meets Peter here and he meets all the disciples, he's saying, I'm meeting you right here. Why? I'm not here to reprimand you. I'm not here because, see, if this is me, if my son's out there and he's doing something he ain't supposed to be doing, what am I going to do? Get over here. But Jesus don't do that, does he? Jesus, as I said, he's trying to bump him back on course. And by bumping back on course, he's going to tell him something specific here. He's going to tell him something specific. And it's this right here. Change the approach. Change the approach. Change the approach. How many approaches something and they've got it in their mind, this is the way it's going to be, and so I'll just walk in it that way. They approach it with the mindset. They approach it with an attitude. I mean, come on, somebody. Oh, they're going to sing this song again? I mean, that's just talking church. Oh, he's preaching on this again? You preached John 21 for 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a row now. What's wrong with you? I'm done, zoned out. We're going to have church at 10:30 again? You're going to go till noon again? No, I'll go to 1. We'll mix it up today. Tyler, he's looking for the back door. Just kidding, Tyler. I know you weren't. Just making sure you're with me. You with me? Amen. Amen. Dyson really was looking for the back door. No. Change the approach. Jesus does not come in here and say, get out of the boat. Because then he's not telling them where you're at is wrong. He's telling them, I'm going to bump you back on course, but change your approach. And he tells them change the approach by what? He says, take the net. Have you caught any fish? Take the net and put it on your right side. Now listen. I said this, I think, already, but you're in a little boat this wide. What good, Jesus, is it going to do to take that net move it from this side to that side? I mean, come on. I mean, it ain't going to. I'm not casting it out. I'm just throwing it as far as I can. This is a big, heavy net. I'm going to throw it, and I'm going to pull that net back in. And this is what it evidently is on the left. Why? Because he's probably right-handed, and he throws that way, right? Routine, over and over again. This is just what they've done. And he'd be in the boat, and he says, "No, now throw it on the right side." And it's like, Jesus, I'm throwing this boat. The fish are right there. They just moved over there. I mean, what? And he's saying, no. I'm trying to get you to change your approach. When you approach this thing, when you're moving in a direction, you got to have an approach. Every one of us has an approach to everything. You'll approach church service this way in a certain mindset. You'll approach in a certain realm. You'll approach church service in a certain. Some of you are prepared for church this morning, amen. Some of you are not. Some of you not. Some of you come ready, you come dressed up, you come decked out, and I'm not talking about the clothes you wore. I'm talking about you're dressed up inside, you got joy in your heart, or maybe you're just broken in your heart, but you said, I know who got the answer. You come ready to go, you come dressed, you have the mindset when you walked in the door, Jesus is going to show up, and Jesus is going to do something in this place, whether I was happy or sad, no matter where I was, when Jesus was going to show up, and my approach is that. Somebody come in with the right mindset. But others did not. Others come in with, oh, well, I'm here. I'm here. I showed up. Ain't that, I like to say that's half the battle for some of us. So often, and they're just here. And in reality, they're not here. Because you can be somewhere and not be somewhere. You can be sitting right there on the couch next to your wife, and you're right here. You're not here. That's a true statement. True. And here's the thing. I'm going to give you 3 tools because I really was going to preach on this a couple of weeks ago, but man, I stand in the shower and I thought because I didn't make it this far, and I thought, well, I'll just kind of brush it into the next series. And he said, no, I'm standing in the shower, and he said, because he looked at me and he says, you need to change your approach. You want that. You want to see that done, you got to change the approach. You got to change your approach. And he said, so I don't just say change the approach, but you got to have tools to change the approach. You got to have the tools to change the approach. And the first one is where I left you off, where we were going a couple of weeks ago. But it's understand this. Know how it matters. If you don't know, if you can't answer the question, does it matter? If you can't answer this question, then you can't go no further in anything. How many understands that going to work matters? Getting up in the morning matters. Coming to church matters. Praying matters. Talking to your friends matters. Eating dinner matters. Getting a drink matters. Everything you do in life, there's a reason behind it. Everything you do has a purpose behind it. There's a reason. And so then what does it matter? And you've got to know how it matters. Everything you do, what does it matter? What does it matter? How does it matter? When I preach the Word of God, so oftentimes I get so fixated on, is somebody getting it? I get so fixated on, I want to see, because I believe God is a God of signs and wonders. So I want to see the Word come to pass. I want to see the Word. If I'm preaching breaking chains, Bryce, I want to see chains broken. I don't want to hear the same old routine, the same old cycle over and over again. I want to know that it matters. I want to know. This is why, see, I can't get in the mindset of Peter, but I'll try my best. Because when he was fishing before, it mattered. They were evidently pretty good at it because they didn't just have one boat. They had a whole slew of boats. They were probably pretty good fishermen. And so this is what they'd done for a living. So they were probably pretty good. And so when you're somebody, it's beneficial and it means something to you, and you know you matter, you know you care. And so this is what brought him back. This is what drew him in. The very thing that he stood with Jesus so oftentimes, and he knew he mattered to Jesus, and he knew Jesus cared. But Jesus ain't right there now. Jesus ain't right there. And he's like, so what I'm doing, what I'm doing, it just don't matter. But it did matter. It did matter. He just lost sight of what it mattered. He lost sight of how it mattered. Because he was leaving an impact on every one of those that were watching him. This is why they followed him out. You matter. You mattered to me, and this is why I called you out and pointed you out, because all the eyes, they're on me, but because you're so close to me, they're on you now. Because you're the one saying, it's no different. We'll still look at David, will we not? I love to compare myself to David. I'm David. Why? David, man after God's own heart. And I love it because you see David failed, but he still loved the Lord. And the Lord could still look at him and say, he's a man after God's own heart. He's after my own heart. He goes after, he loves me. And see, and so you love to look at somebody like David. And you can draw to that, and you can just look at it. And this is where they were, because Peter was the same way. He's like, I'll die for the Lord. I'll fight for the Lord. And these other guys are like, I love the Lord. I wish I had that much. Have you ever looked at somebody and said that? They're going through something, and they can look at the enemy and say, you're not doing this, you're not. And you know, man, I wish I had that much faith. You can profess it. You can say it, but in your heart, you're just like, I want that. And that's where they are. And this is why he says, you got to know what you matter. You got to know how what you're doing matters. If you understand this, then when you approach the situation, then it matters. See, my mindset changed, Caden. See, when I got saved, I was so full of myself. I didn't care what anybody thought, and I really didn't. I had this complex that I said I didn't have nobody. I cared to the extent that it was, I wanted them to see me as a big man, a strong man, as somebody that was self-sufficient. That's what I wanted them to see. So I didn't care what I said to anybody. I didn't care if I had to fight somebody. I didn't care. I ran my mouth more times than I should have. Should have had my head knocked off a time or two, to be honest. But the moment I got saved, then I started looking at things differently. I said, everything I say matters. Every action I have matters. Everywhere I go matters. And I remember, oh Lord, I remember our car broke down. I brought it to a local mechanic. And boy, he ripped us off. Cost me extra couple $1,000s. And I went in there, and I wanted to tell him and give him a piece of my mind, because I felt like he should have paid for it, because there was no deal. It was just, well, here it is. And this way we found it. And the car was fine until you touched it. But hey, I was furious. And I went in there, and I remember the Lord speaking to me saying, what you say, I mean, before I ever walked in the door, what you say will matter. And he gave me a picture of a brother, and he said, that's his dad. And if you push that, he'd been praying for him. He'd been trying to get hit. And if you do and say what you're about to do, there's a repercussion of that. There's something that will respond from that, and it'll push it, because what they're going to do is say, yeah, that's what I want. I'm going to join that. Somebody that acts that way and talks that way. And so all of a sudden my verbiage had to change, and my attitude had to change, and that anger had to turn into a loving spirit and say, well, you know, I guess, and suck it up. Because when I understood what it matters, because if I don't, then I revert back to the old man. Come on, somebody. I revert back to the very old man that God brought me out of, somebody that had to get his point across and had to be right and come on. I start running the same cycle, because what does it matter? What does it matter? Because there's something that matters that comes out of it. What does it matter? In this moment, Peter didn't understand what he left mattered. And so he said, where you're at, open up your eyes and see what matters. See, because when he jumps out of the boat, what do? They don't jump out of the boat first, do they? He does nothing to stop from getting to the Lord. He goes to that place and he says, it matters where I'm at. And so there was nothing from Jesus, get over here. It was just let him see it. It no longer became about the fish. It no longer come about the multitude. He ain't worried about none of that. He says, there's Jesus. And all of a sudden, the focal point of all the disciples gets to Jesus. All eyes turn to Jesus. Why? Because of the one that said, I'd do anything for him. All of a sudden, Jesus said, what does it matter? What does it matter? And most of us, we can't answer that question. But if we'd sit down and really do some serious soul searching, all of a sudden we would find ourselves. We would find ourselves realizing that we're doing things and going after things that aren't bringing fruit. They're bringing misery. They're bringing contempt. They're bringing things in our life that don't matter. They're bringing more worrisome in our life. They're bringing more heartache in our life. They're bringing more fear into our life. They're bringing a lot more into our life that God's trying to push out and get out. I mean, something simple. I don't know how many I've talked to over the years, over this last year, since COVID all started, and people said, I got to turn off the news. Because all it is negative, and I don't want to hear negative. I want to hear positive. Because God's still on his throne, and I'm a child of God, and I want to hear how great things are. And they lie to me anyway, and so I just get mad at it. I mean, you said TV very long, in 3 minutes, they listen to somebody, you just start yelling at them, you're a liar, right? Maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. You start getting, and then you're like, what does this matter? If they're soaking this into my life, then all of a sudden it's bringing it in, so I'm going to push it out. It's simple to look at, right, on that realm, but it's some of the things that we get in routine and we continuously bring into our life, and that all of a sudden, they're the things that keeps us right where we're at and keeps us circling. Because it brings into our life, what does it matter? What does it matter? And he looks at Peter and he says, just throw it on the other side. Just change the approach. Just change the approach. Because right now, if you just know what it matters. Because see, that's where my mind goes, does it not? What would it matter from left to right? What would it matter? It's something so little. Because what I'm doing is not working. This may. And so this is the second tool that most of us, I'll try not to preach on, but I probably will. But you got to get real with yourself and others. You've got to get real with you. This is not speaking, oh, the snowstorm's terrible and it's so bad. This is getting real. There's things in my life that need to change. Oh, Lord, help me, because it's amazing how many people, Lord, got to help me with this one. Social media has ruined this country, this world. You know how, and I preached on this, and I've told you there's benefits to it. There's some great things with it. But you know how many people, they got to present something to the world that they are, and they're not. They've got to present some. I've got it all together. Look at me. I'm happy. And in the meantime, they're sitting in their room. They're bawling and crying. Their relationships are all messed up. But yet we got it. Look at us. We're a happy little family. We got it all together. We're the greatest thing. And we're doing everything. I've told people, when you want a telltale sign that there's something going on in somebody's household, watch them overcompensate. Watch how they overcompensate. We're just perfect. It gets better every day. She gets more beautiful, don't she? Just with age. And she just gets nicer and nicer. And it's like, and you're like, okay. Are you trying to sell her to me or what? Come on, somebody. I'm serious, and it's all over social media. I mean, it's ruining the mindset of people because then they don't get real with themselves. They lie. Oh, Lord help me, because I had a cousin. He would lie so much that I really believe he got to the place that he believed everything he said. Great kid, great kid. But he got to the place that he wanted to impress people and he cared what people thought. And he sat on that so much that he kept telling it and telling it and telling it. And next thing you know, he began to believe it. I'll stand before you. Oh, marriage ain't perfect. You know why? Because she's out with a messed up man. I'll be real. I won't tell on her this morning. We'll just keep it nice. I'm in the flesh, am I not? I said that because the day I get perfect day, I'm in glory. That's the day. So I can't point a finger because we know she ain't in glory yet. She's a long ways away. Lord help me. She's getting closer. Better just go right now. No, it's getting real. It's getting real. It's waking up and saying, listen, there's some things in my life that need to change. Look, I need to be a better pastor. There ain't no if. Every day I'm asking myself, how can I be a better pastor? How can I be a better dad? I don't, listen, you tell me you're a great dad, I'll guarantee you this, you're not. You tell me you're a great mama, you're not. You're good, maybe. But I'll tell you this, you know a great daddy? My Heavenly Father that put nothing between me and Him, that set at nothing to break down every wall. Look, men are too selfish to be a great daddy. I don't know. I'm talking to the men all the time. I don't know. Listen, we don't get this as people because we got to get real and understand I'm not great. I got some things I got to work on. I could be a better dad. I could be a better husband. Let me do that, Lord. But I got to take a different approach to it every day. And it's getting real. It's just getting real, getting down and dirty with yourself. Self-evaluation, self-check. You know what stopped me from giving my life to the Lord? Because I thought I was just good the way I was. What stopped me from moving ahead in life and ever just surrendering myself and yielding myself was the fact I thought I was good. But understand this. You know why they don't move ahead? Because we're not yielding ourselves again and again and again. This is why Jesus says, take up your cross daily, because there's a daily choice that there's something in my life that needs to be laid down and carried to the cross. Every day of my life. There's things I wake up wanting. There's things I wake up desiring. There's things I wake up thinking about. There's things I wake up and I just want to do. And there's and the Lord says they're not for you. And they may not even be bad. Same place I was. It's not bad to be a doctor, but I want you to be a healer. He says, if I got more for you, get real with yourself. I've not reached perfection yet. Things in my life ain't reached perfection yet. Getting real. And we live in a world. Look at Luke. Luke, what is it? Luke 16. Yeah, 16. Jesus has just come off some parables. And I might preach here in a couple of weeks. But he just come off telling them some parables. And then he gets in and telling them, you know, if you love God, or you're going to have to choose. I'll just paraphrase. You got to choose between God and mammon. If you love God or you love mammon, it's just that simple. And the Pharisees who love money heard all this and were staring at Jesus. They didn't like what he said. Why didn't they like what he said? Because he poked them. He said, there's something in your life not right, and it needs to get right. You're more concerned about money than you are the things. You claim you're a man or woman of God, and you're more concerned about money. And Jesus said to them, you're the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others. So in other words, see, this is the problem. This is the problem with so many different things out there. And I use social media. But there's some problem, because what we do is, even if we're not got the mindset, we may not even have the mindset, I'm trying to impress everybody else, but we see others and we start comparing ourselves to others. Well, maybe my marriage ain't as good. You ever saw them bodybuilders on TV, Caden? And they're all like this, and you're like, man, they're big, and you're like, I must be a scrawny little dude, right? You start, it's just a mental thing. It's automatic. It kicks in. You automatic, right, Terry? You know what I'm talking about. These guys, Arnold Schwarzenegger walks out there all greased up and oiled up, and all he does is sit around in the weight room all day. Of course he's going to look like that. We got jobs, right? And so we don't feel like working out. We worked out there all day. We don't want to go in the gym and sit. I already sweated all day. And we look at him and say, man, maybe I'm not so big. Maybe I'm not strong. We're stronger than they are, probably. Right? The comparison just kicks in. It's human nature. So we see it. We start saying, our marriages aren't that good. We don't do this. We don't do that. I must not be as good a dad because I'm not taking my kids all over the country. I'm not taking them to the beach, and I can't afford to take them to the beach. Right? And then you start thinking and questioning, maybe I'm not a good parent. I'll take them to Hawaii. I don't got the money to take them to Hawaii. I got some cousins. I hope they don't. I hope my cousins don't listen to my message. I got some cousins. They go to and then their kid has passed on, and it's just them, husband and wife, and they're a little older than me. But they travel everywhere. And they're little mini vacation. Well, why don't you take me? I haven't been on vacation. I go to vacation Branson down the road here. That's my vacation. You know what I'm saying? Every couple of months, we went on another vacation. And you start thinking, what am I doing wrong? And so he says, you are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others. In other words, you look at others, and this is how you justify what you do. This is how you rate yourself. This is how you determine yourself. This is how you determine if I'm right. This is how you determine if you're wrong. This is how you determine if you're on the right path or in the right place. It's by and for them, it's their money, but how many of us, it's by our job, it's by our position, it's by where we sit in the church, by what we wear to the church, or it could be so many different things, and we justify ourselves. Well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm the CEO of my company, and I'm bringing home more money than all of you. It don't make you right. And the enemy will lie to the church about this. I'm so far off notes right now. The enemy will lie to the church about this because then he comes in and says, see what Sister Pam's got? She's doing pretty good. She must be a great woman of God. Not knowing how hard she worked and the dedication and the time, the effort. We don't know none of that, and we don't know what's going on underneath. Could be broken and hurt. Just screaming out and yearning for it. But this is how we start looking at ourselves. This is how we start judging ourselves. And then what happens? I go back to what I know. I go back to because I was good at it. You know how many times the enemy, oh Lord, has told me to quit preaching? About every other week. And then you walk in here and the church is half empty and you're like, I must be doing a lot wrong. And like I said, there are things I do wrong. I'm not saying that. I got to change my approach in certain things. But not all of it is that. If I start judging by what everybody else has, when God says, the only thing you can judge is by what I've given you and what I placed for you. And so you justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but God knows your hearts. God knows your heart. Isn't it amazing how we can lie to ourselves? We can even lie to our spouse. We think they know us better than everybody, but we're still covering things up before them. They don't know certain things. Yeah, if they only knew. And he says, God knows. I know. This is why I can stand before you and tell you that this is all you care about is money. Why you're making a name for yourself with money. This is why Jesus said, because I know. I'm God. And I know. Can't lie to me. Get real with yourself. You ever want more of me and want to move ahead in life, you ever want to, then get to the place you get real with yourself. This is how I approach things differently. Have you ever walked in a room, I'm the world's worst, and said, oh, I know it's going to end up this way. I just know Bryce is going to make me mad if he talks. He better not open his mouth. Just keep your mouth shut, Bryce, because you know what I'm saying? You ever walked in that room and had that mindset? I love you, Bryce. I know you wouldn't make me mad. George does all the time. You ever walked in the room with that mindset, with that attitude? What are you doing? Even with your own spouse, you walk in. If they shoot me that look today, I'm not even looking at her. You know what I'm saying? You're approaching it with it in your mind. And you come in and you're justifying the way you feel in that room. Well, they've hurt me 10 times. They've done this. They've taken advantage of it. You've got all these excuses. And that's how you approach it. I was reading, because I got pictured in this airplane. I got pictured on an airplane. I hate flying. Hate flying. But I kept thinking, what is the most important part of landing? You know, the landing is what? Where you come and reach your destination. That's the best part. It sure ain't taking off. It sure ain't the flight, especially when you're sitting between two big old guys and you're why they ever put me there? I was so mad. I get on this flight. You talk about feeling like a little guy. They're bigger than the seats. Whole nother story. The best part is the arrival. You went on this flight for a reason. You weren't flying to Hawaii for no reason. You wanted to get to Hawaii. You wanted to reach a destination. So when you get there, that's the part. I've reached it. But there's something very important about it. It's about the approach. It's about the way you come in. It's about how you enter it in. One of the things that has to happen is a de-thruster. You got to let off the thrust. You got to let it down gradually. You got to come in at a different pace. Isn't it amazing? Because when you think about the flight analogy, it's kind of like your Christian walk so oftentimes. Because when you get saved, you're just full throttle, busting out, and you're just going and telling the Lord about everybody about Jesus. I mean, you're excited, you're on fire, and then you just hit cruise control. I'm just going through life. It's pretty down there. Look at all them peasants. It's pretty. It's so pretty. I could preach right here all day. Because that's our walk. And then you fly from Chicago to St. Louis and you hit a snowstorm. And you get over St. Louis and you just circle. It took longer to get on that plane than it did to fly there. Then I sit in circling longer than the whole flight and getting on the plane. And talk about the sickest feeling. You're in the air and you're just flying over. I'm sure you've been there. And you just feel like you stop and turn and go back the other way. Stop and turn around and go back the other way. That's where most of us sit. Right over the immediate place we're going. Our destination. And we just sit there and circle. This is where Peter's at. This is where the disciples are at. They're just circling. And they're in the midst of it and thinking maybe we should just go back. Because we may not get down there. And they're on their way back. But when you go to land, all that throttle, all that thrust that took you off, kept you in the air, everything that kept you afloat has to decelerate. And you got to wait. And it's a slow process, is it not? They don't just... No, they decelerate, and depending on all kinds of different variables, and we won't get into them. But as we decelerate and we're coming down, what do we got to do? We got to be patient. We got to wait. And what do we got to do? We got to have it in the mind. We got to have it in the mind. That's where it is. And all eyes are fixed there. All eyes are going there. Everything's moving there. My approach is one of this. I see the destination. I see where I'm going. I see it. I picture it. I picture it. And so as I drop thrust, and all of a sudden, I don't no longer see where I left. I'm no longer seeing it from high above the sky, am I? Don't it seem like so many promises of God, you're just up above them and everybody else is receiving them? Everybody else is walking in them. And you're just up there and like, I'll be real with you. Lord, I'm way past time. I'm going to get there, I promise. I'll kick it in gear, maybe. I shouldn't have said it. I'd be here till 1. So oftentimes, as a pastor, I get looking at other pastors. I mean, you know the $1 million pastors got the big old house, and I've got this little thing here that you can't even have somebody come over at. And I start thinking to myself, am I doing something wrong? And all this remodel, I don't think people realize how much I spend. And I don't tell you that to say, look at me here, and I'm not saying that. The money that I pour into it, the money I put into it, not to mention the effort, I'm just talking money, the numerical value. And I put that in and I put it in, and I think to myself, am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something wrong? You see where I'm going? Because that's what happens. It kicks in. Because all of a sudden I start looking and surveying. I'm surveying everybody else from up here. I'm just on cruise control, and I'm just doing what I know to do, and I'm just trying to get to the destination. I'm trying to reach that place that the blessings that are poured out cannot be contained and will overflow. And that's where I want to get. But as I look down there, I see everybody else. I see, and I question. And so then what happens? Like I said, you already think about going back because there was a numerical, there was a lot more value back there. So you think. And in the midst of it, you're sitting there and you're thinking, but you got to get real. You got to get real with yourself. And it backs back up to maybe there's some things in me that's got to change. And if there is, then I got to change them. And when I change them, then I unload all of that. I take it all off. That's my thruster taking it off. See, what do we do when we take off? We're saying, Lord, I want to be your hands and feet. I want to go after you. I'll do whatever it takes to get your will in my life. I'll do whatever. But see, there's a moment that all of a sudden you got to take all that you've been carrying and all that baggage, and you got to let it just out the back door and just let it go and just coast into the place you're going. Just coast in. It's letting it all down. Just letting it down. Just coasting in. But taking my eyes from everybody else and saying, there it is. There it is. There's that airport. That's what I've been waiting for. That's what I've been longing for. I want off this silly thing. I want to get there. And here's the last thing. Here's the last thing. Listen. Listen. I sit here and I listen to this story. Have you ever really thought about it? Because it said Jesus stood on the shore and they recognized him not. And he says, hey, yo, you guys catch any fish over there? And they're like, no. What's it to you? And he's like, well, why don't you just take and throw it on the other side? And you know what my mindset is? What an idiot. I've been out here all day. You're going to tell, that's right? What an idiot. It says they knew him not. They didn't know it was Jesus. What made them even listen to him? They didn't even realize it was Jesus till the fish come in, and the one Jesus loved, Johnny, Johnny boy says, oh, he's forgot about the fish too. That must be Jesus. Peter says, they didn't even know it was the Lord. But for something made them listen in this moment. Something drew them. Understand something. When the voice of God, this is why it's so prevalent to be prepared and ready for service. I don't care if you're sitting at home. Boy, I wish some people would hear this service. If they would approach it as, I'm getting something, I'm going somewhere with this, and they come in with that heart, I'm going after God, then all of a sudden they get in tune and they'll recognize the voice of God in it. You know how many people come? I sit in church service with the mindset time and time again, I go to church to make my wife happy. I went to church after church to make my wife happy. That's why I went. I didn't. And I went in with this mindset. This was my approach to it. If this guy says one thing bad, I'm walking out of here. I'm going to let him know I didn't like what he said. I did. Now, are you really in a place to, have you approached this thing right? Absolutely not. But all of a sudden, when the voice of God comes, there was something that kicks in. And they just said, we need to listen to this. We need to heed to this. Maybe, because why? Because not only what we're doing ain't working. So I was out here to catch fish, and what I'm doing ain't working. So now I need to change my approach, and so I recognize what I'm doing ain't working. It ain't being beneficial. So I might as well try something different. And so I take a different approach, and by doing so, I'm heeding to. I don't even know who this guy is, but maybe he sees something I don't. Maybe he hears something I don't. But all of a sudden, just something says I need to listen. I'm going to show you the opposite of this, and I'll end with this. 2 Kings. You guys have heard this story. It's been preached numerous times. The Nahum, the leper, he's the chief captain of the army of Aram. And Aram, the king of Aram, he loves this guy. I mean, he's his right-hand man. And Naaman comes down with leprosy, and he's distraught. He's like, this is my right-hand man. What am I going to do? I mean, when you love somebody, you do whatever it takes, right? See, he had the right mindset. He goes in with this thing with the mindset, hey, he's got it. I've got to do something to change it. Why? Because I'm not leaving him that way. We could talk about friendship all day long. If I love somebody I care, I'm going to do what's beneficial for them. I'm going to take them somewhere. Why? Because I've got to get them there. I got to get them there. And Nahum went to because Nahum found out he has a young lady that works for him, and she told him about a prophet in Israel. It says Nahum went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. By all means, see, he says, by all means, if there's a chance. See, this becomes very important because you got to remember, these guys do not worship the one God. They worship all kinds of false gods. They worship Baal, who's not, and Baal don't have the answer. No one else has the answer. And I'm sure they went to Baal. I'm sure they went to these other gods, and they've sacrificed, and they've done everything, and it didn't work. And so he says, I'm going to get you to the place. By all means, go. To the king, Aram replied, I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So Nahum left, taking with him 10 talents of silver. See, he said, I don't care what it costs me. I don't care if I'm the bad guy. I don't care if I'm going to, I don't care. I love him enough. I'm going to put all of myself out there, and I'm going to pour it out. 10,000 shekels of gold and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, with this letter I'm sending my servant Nahum to you so that you may cure him of leprosy. Oh, it gets good now. As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robe and said, Am I God? Am I God? Boy, you know, if I'm Elijah, I'm going to walk in here and slap this guy upside the head and say, no, but you know what you are? You're supposed to be the lighthouse to God. You're supposed to have the approach that in Israel, anything's possible. Because, Lord, help me, because I'm going to preach now. Because we walk into a church, and some people say, are we God? No, but we're the light of God, and we've got a job to do, and it is to this right here. I am been sent forth as the carrier of the power of God. That's why the man of Elijah, the prophet of God, was in Israel, because they were to be just this. And this guy don't even know what he's carrying in him. He don't know what his job is. He don't know his destination. He don't even know where he's going. And his approach is this: he's just out to get me. He's just out to get me. He tore his robes and said, am I God? Can I kill and can I bring life? Most certainly you can. You know why? Because life resides in the God of all creation, and the God of all creation resides in Israel. Today, David said, I will show you that there is a God, in Israel. I will show you that you will bow before my God. Oh, Lord, help me. Yeah, I'm going to show you that I can kill and bring back life, because I have that life in me. I have the power of life and death in my tongue. Do I not? That's what God said I have. So I have it. And he had it then. He had all of it at the capacity in his hands. And he didn't even recognize what he had. He took the approach, he's just going to kill me. What does this fellow send? Someone to me to be cured of leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me. You ever been in that mindset? You ever been in that mindset? Boy, you don't tell certain people certain things, because they've already made up your mind while you're there. You walk in and you try to love on somebody, and they're like, you're just here to rub it in my nose that I failed. No, I'm really not. I'm here to help you up. But this is the mindset he took. He can't even get real where he's at. I'm in doubt. I'm in fear. I'm in unbelief. This is the king. This is the guy. This is the Peter, guys. This is the Peter of this time. He is supposed to be the one that points them to the Lord. He's the one that's supposed to be the carrier and the bearer where all eyes are fixed on him. He's supposed to set the example. And this is the example he set. You wonder why he ain't going to see it? He ain't a part of it? You know what happens after this? You can go on and read it. War breaks out. They got more. Let me tell you this. If the king just welcomed him in, walks in Elijah, what all of a sudden happens with him and the king of Abraham? He's scared to death of the king of Abraham. He ain't scared of the king. He's scared of Elisha. He goes after Elisha to get him. But in the meantime, he ain't scared of the king of Israel at all. When Elisha, the man of God, heard the king of Israel had torn his robes, see, he approaches this thing differently. He says, he sent him this message: why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know there is a prophet in Israel. Let him know there's a man of God in Israel. Let him know there's a man that's going to serve God and going to watch God go to work. Let him know there's a God that's still in control. Let him know that I don't care what the world tells me or says. Let him know something can change. Something new can be birthed. Let him know he no longer needs to be left in leprosy. Let him know it ain't dependent on where he's from. It don't depend on who he is. It's dependent on my God and my God alone. It's dependent on the one that loves him without a shadow of a doubt. It's dependent on the one and only, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It's dependent on him. And let him know he's in the house today. Amen. Let him know he's here and he's willing and he's ready. Let him know. Oh, come on. And so let him know. Let him know. Let him know. I've got to let somebody know. Listen, God ain't leaving you there. God ain't leaving you in that predicament. You want to get up? It's time to get up and move. I'm not even done yet. Come on. Not leaving you there. You're a child of mine. I won't leave you in leprosy. I'm sure not going to leave you there laying dying. I'm going to gird you up. There's a God in the house, and there's a man that says God is here. Are you listening to what I'm saying? But Nahum, all of a sudden, he went with his horses. He went with his chariots. He stops at the door of Elisha's house. And Elijah sent him to measure. He don't even go meet him. He says, See, my power, my God, isn't dependent on me being there. It ain't even dependent on me. Oh, it's dependent on one thing. It's dependent on the one and only God. And so now, he says, go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan. Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored and you will be cleansed. But watch Nahum. Nahum went away angry and said, he didn't hear the voice of God in that. He's more concerned about what everybody else thinks. He's more concerned about what is just comfortable for him. He's more concerned with all. He says, I thought that he would surely come out to me. Ain't we made up our mind about the way God's going to do some things this morning? God only works if the pastor jumps on the chair. God only works if he shouts. God only works if he dances. I mean, I've had people say, oh, that's the way church is if I run around this place. Church is church if God's in the house. It ain't better if I run around here and act silly. It isn't. It's good when he's in the house, whether I'm here or not. I don't even have to go out because he was there. And God gave him a word and he wasn't listening. And he says, I thought that he'd surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God. He already did. He already did. He said, God, go intervene. Wave his hand over the spot and cure me of leprosy. Do all the little dance. You got to do all the fancy things and all the right things. He's got to anoint me with the oil. He's got to pray. No, that ain't the way God works. He says, why? Change your approach, change your mindset. It's all possible. How many things? All things are. No. Somebody better preach with me. How many things are possible? God, just maybe this, maybe that. No, all. How much is all? When I say all, Dyson walked in the other day, or Donovan, one of the two, and said, well, all of them. And I said, it ain't all of them because I don't feel that way. No, all of them. He says, all of them. Well, all but you and Mom. Then it ain't all. All is all. All things are possible with God. All things are possible. There is nothing that isn't possible for the God who created. All things. There's no limit on it. And he says, are not Abana and Pharpar and the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned and went off in rage. Now listen, God wasn't done though. God wasn't done. God said, I'll send somebody, I'm going to send a mouthpiece that maybe you'll listen to. The God unwittingly prophesied. We know this throughout the Word. He'll use people to prophesy, and they don't even know what to prophesy. And this young man, he says, it's Naaman's servant. And Naaman's servant says, get real with yourself. Get real with yourself. Answer me this. My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, it wouldn't have mattered if he come out there or not. If he told you to go stand up on the pinnacle of the temple and proclaim yourself God, would you not have done it if you knew you were going to be healed? Would you have not done it if it was some great thing? How much more than when he tells you, wash and be cleansed? He goes on, he says, what's holding you back? If he's telling you it's this way, then won't it be this way? Are you hearing what God's telling you this morning? Are you hearing what he's saying? Are you hearing what he's calling? You know, I'm going to end with this. Come on. Come on, Sister Kathy, come on. I'm sorry for keeping you so long. This is heavy on my heart. I believe this wholeheartedly that God has got something for us. I do. And I believe we've circled for far too long. It breaks my heart to watch the children of God and my brothers and sisters to run the same old cycle. You know how many times Lord, I got to be careful. You know how many times I sit through different sessions of counseling or listening or phone calls and all this, and they run, and it's like, then change something. Do something different. Quit just doing it. It's said, you do the same thing over and over again, expect a different result, is insanity. It's insanity. And think about it. We do it every day. In the meantime, right there's our destination. And we won't try something different. When Jesus come out there, I love this because he don't come out just to Peter. He 7 others there. Count them. 7. Isn't it amazing how the way completeness? And he comes out there and he says, just change the approach. And they listened to something. Something compelled them in that moment. And it compelled them to change. When I got saved, when I reached that moment, see, I had tried to do so many different things. I tried to be, because I wanted to be a better dad. I mean, that was my desire. I wanted to be. It wasn't like I woke up every day and said, hey, I'm just perfect. I saw it. God was speaking to me and showing me these things. And so what did I do? I started trying to fix them things. But what did I do? See, I started to change my approach, but what it caused me to do was run the same old cycle because it got me, because I couldn't ever break it. Because it was my makeup. That's who I was. Until I said, I got to take the approach to let it down and pour it out before Him, and here it is. Here it is. Listen, it still happens. I'm going to be real, because there's some people that struggle with addiction still to this day, and God's not, He's saying, I want to move you further. You're struggling with it, so change the approach this morning. Go at it differently. Go at it differently. Attack it differently. See what it's doing to you, your family, your friends. See what it's doing. There's some people out there today that their lives are just falling apart, and they're nothing but anguish and heartache. And God's saying, do it differently. Change something. Because when you walk in that door, you're approaching something. What are the approach you taking? He says, today, are you approaching this throne of mine with the mindset there's something that needs to change? And I want it to change before you. Let it start with me. Stand with me all over this place. She's going to begin to sing this. And I want you to know something. I want you to really grasp this morning. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I went through this week. I've went through this week. And I've heard people speak things and say things about a certain situation. I'm not going to get into that. And they've decreed it. They're done. They're just done with it, and they let it set in stone. My God said, who am I? I don't care what you saw in the past. I don't care what's happened in the past, but I'm God. And there's nothing that stops me from intervening except for you. I'm not going to be that one. My approach is this. I don't want to approach anything as done. I approach it as this. God, come in here and do this thing. The altars are open. I really challenge you this morning, if there's anything here that speaks to you that says, hey, maybe I need to get real with myself, maybe that's all it is. I just got to get real with myself. I don't think there's anybody in this room, not a one of us, that can say, hey, my life's perfect. And I don't care if it is. God still has more for you. I don't care if you're a millionaire and you had the greatest wife in the world. Still things in my life that God says still better for me, still greater things. He says, I want you to change your approach this morning. Come and find out what it can be. Let's begin to worship the Lord.
Give myself away.